So I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Wincie today, who is head of the Rose Review implementation. She has a very impressive biography, which I haven't got time to go through, but I'm going to pull out a couple of my favourite facts. You refer to yourself as a digital evangelist, and you're a co-founder of NatWest's Girls Can Code project and Tech She Can, an organisation that works to increase the number of women in tech roles. But Wincie is also a serial entrepreneur and featured in season 2 of BBC's My £1 Million Menu. We're not going to talk too much about that today, maybe another time, because I want to focus on the Rose Review. Yes. And I was thrilled to be asked to contribute. But I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about the background as to how it came into being, the commissioning and the key area it looks at.
Absolutely. So the issue of female entrepreneurs in this country has long been known. And it was something that AGM Treasury in particular was really interested in. They wanted to commission a report. Now we as a bank, as RBS, and underneath which NatWest is one of our large brands, we are the largest bank for SMEs in the UK. And we also happen to have a CEO whose name was Alison Rose, who leads, who is our CEO of our commercial and our private bank, of which the SMEs roll up into. So it just made perfect sense. The Treasury asked Alison if she would be willing to write that report. We were really excited and happy to do so, so she did. That report was launched on International Women's Day this year. It has been gotten some tremendously positive feedback, I would say, and it's galvanized quite an important body of work. Within the report itself, it's highlighted 8 major initiatives that are constantly, that is my current job, which is to roll out these 8 initiatives. What's really important to remember, though, and understand, is that when we wrote the report, it was meant to be a non-competitive sport. There is such a dearth of female entrepreneurs, and the economic impact of bringing them to start and scale businesses at the same rate as men in this country is so vast and huge that actually there is more than enough for everyone to do. And therefore, a lot of what we do is not meant to be RBS or NatWest branded, although we are big supporters and pushing the initiative through, but very much about collaborating with all the labs around the country, as well as all the banks that cover the country to help support entrepreneurship.
And I think the point you make about the economic imperative to me is key. The statistic that I was struck by in the report, and I'll just read it, is that up to £250 billion of new value could be added to the UK economy if women started and scaled new businesses at the same rate as men. Can you maybe pick up on the economic potential more? I think also reflecting on the current uncertain economic and political situation we find ourselves in.
Absolutely. So it's, I think we had some great information, I think, today about the economy and where we are. And there, I think, first of all, if you look across the UK, there isn't a lot of slack, I would say, in the economy. And what the report found, it was very data-driven, and what we found is that it would be over £250 billion of value added to the economy, the overall UK economy, if women were to both start and scale businesses at the same rate as men. And what we found in the report is that it was at every stage. It wasn't that they all started at the same and then they just had differences when it came to scaling, etc. It's only 1 in 3 entrepreneurs across the UK are women. And what we found is that it was at every single stage, from intention to start, to actually starting it, to sustaining it, to actually growing it. Now, one of the things that we mentioned is that the UK is one of the top areas for foreign investment across the EU, and certainly internationally it's top 7. And one of the areas that we get invested in quite a lot is in technology and in STEM subjects, science, technology, engineering, and maths areas. It is an area that the UK is actually really proud of, certainly in artificial intelligence and all these kinds of new technologies. And in the report, unfortunately, we also found that because women in this country opt out of those subjects in both education and in disciplines and in working, I think the most recent studies is about only 22% of all roles in STEM subjects across the UK are filled by women, for example. They naturally don't go into those sectors when you talk about entrepreneurship as well. And what that means is if they're not going into those sectors, the most productive sectors, then they are missing out. And also the UK economy itself is also missing out on half the population's brain power, if you want to say that. So what I would say is there's definitely uncertainty when it comes to Brexit. However, the investment in STEM subjects and productive type sectors have not slowed down in the last 3 years, even with the uncertainty of Brexit. That has been something that has always been top of mind. So the UK is still seen as a big hub. London is still a big center. And there's definitely areas around the country who are excelling in those areas worldwide.
And you talked about some of the barriers that you identified. Just briefly, can you highlight some of those barriers and what the Rose Review is now recommending is done about them?
Yes. So the barriers, there were 5 key barriers that we found in the report. I think and they fall into different categories depending on whether it was someone starting a business or whether it was someone trying to scale a business. So what I would say is number 1 is access to finance, funding. This is an issue, I would say, and let me just emphasize that these barriers are not new barriers. They are barriers that apply to both male and female entrepreneurs. However, when you are in a marginalized background, they are amplified. So the barriers become even bigger. So as much as for example, when you talk about access to finance, women were asking for about 50% less capital than men. So because of that, they don't necessarily have the feel that they need to run and scale and grow those businesses as quickly as maybe the male entrepreneurs. The second one that we saw was family care. So family care, so in this country, women spend 60% more time on family care than the men. And because of that, female entrepreneurs with children, for example, cited family care as the number 1 reason for why they weren't scaling their businesses. And that is important. Now, also because there's a related one to the remaining 3 as well, because they spend all that time with the family care, and if you saw that chart about aging population, we also have the problem where the burden of taking care of the aging population tends to fall upon the women in this country as well. So you kind of get hit from both sides, and plus that means when they're dealing with this, they have less time to network, find mentors, and to find people that are critical to continuing to stay and grow their businesses. And then the last 3 were around risk awareness. So there is, females tend to, or the female entrepreneurs we studied as part of the report, have a higher awareness of whether or not, of the risk involved in setting up and starting and scaling a business. And as a result, sometimes that will keep them from actually starting or growing their businesses in a certain way. So it's important to understand that this isn't, some things that people tend to say is confidence. It's not about confidence. They're perfectly confident of starting and building their businesses. It was more around the more awareness, higher awareness of what the risks are in starting them, and therefore they might be less likely to do so.
Conscious of time,
Oh,
I
sorry,
may
I can
hold
go
us on
forever.
the other 2.
Yes.
I could as well. We could be in terrible trouble. But I want to bring us back to particularly the first area you talked about, access to finance,
Yes.
because one of the things I think we're really proud of at Coaster Capital is that we are the first LEP, the only LEP, to be piloting the banker in residence, and really thrilled that our banker in residence, Vicky Stevens, is here today. Can you talk to us specifically about that programme and the benefits you think it could bring?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we found that's important that I've already spoken about is accessibility. So that's access to finance, to expertise, and one of the things that we want to do is to be able to launch a program of experts in residence across all the labs around the country. And that's a variety of different experts depending on needs. One of the things that was easy for us to identify, and actually Bayes as a government as well, identified was the need for bankers. Vicky herself actually has been spending the last few months in Costa Capital. Actually, Vicky, would you mind just coming up and spending maybe 40 seconds? 40 seconds on the experience and the types of things you've been working on with the Costa Capital Lab.
Yes, I have to say firstly, so I've been working with Costa Capital for about 3 months now. My experience has been nothing but positive. The team have been absolutely great, engaging with me, working through our initiatives through the Rose Review. We've been going out and running sort of joint appointments when we're going out and seeing customers and businesses together, collaborating on events, particularly looking at things around the finance aspect as well. And to echo Julie's words earlier, the Coastal Capital region is really diverse, and I think it's actually been invaluable having the likes of myself and perhaps other experts in residence working with other LEPs across the UK, because we're able to understand the support that you guys can offer, particularly from the Growth Hub in more detail. So that's only going to support more and more businesses. So I just hope, actually, you know, given how sort of open and welcoming you guys have been, that the other LEPs are going to do the same if we roll it.
Absolutely. And to probably recap on kind of the areas of the Rose Review is starting to tackle, the first thing is the access to finance. So we've launched, this is back in July at Downing Street, we launched a new Investing in Women code. And this has been signed up to by 9 banks, including ourselves, as well as Lloyds and Barclays, TSB Santander, Bank of Ireland, and so on. And what we've agreed is that we would disclose how much we're investing in women collectively, and we would also agree that we would adopt best practices when it comes to investing in women, of which we're hoping that our example of starting with experts in residence takes flight. There's also a desire to set up a new investment vehicle for investing in women and setting up a sub-council that will focus on the particular stat that we found that less than 1% of VC funding were going to female entrepreneurs. So those are the areas that we're focused on. In terms of family care, what I spoke about there, we are also looking at launching a suite of banking products that are related to supporting female entrepreneurs or all entrepreneurs with family care responsibilities. And then in that accessibility, it is taking what Vicky's done and that wonderful pilot. So you guys have been a shining example of what we can do when we work so closely with the labs and the local growth hubs, and actually rolling that out across the nation. We wanted to start with bankers, and that's already in train. We're going to be rolling that out very soon. However, we also want to look at other experts, because I think you very much said in the other things that we saw, there is a need for other types of skills, digital skills or other types of skills, and that is extremely important as well.
And I think we're going to probably have to hold that thought. Yes. We're meeting in London next week to plot some of this. And in the last 10 seconds, if you were going to give us as a LEP everything you've heard today, one challenge of what we should be doing.
Oof, I can't stick to just one challenge, but I will try to encapsulate a lot under one.
In 10 seconds.
In 10 seconds. I would encourage an increased collaboration across the private sectors to really listen to your businesses to see what are the experts that they need support with, and to work with us in terms of bringing the bankers in residence. So who's next? What should we be doing? And also, we touched on education. We are working with the Department for Education and across education to try to pull together new materials to help the next generation in terms of entrepreneurship as well. So what are the areas, what are the skills that your constituency, that your local areas need? And to feed that back so that we can do that both for your LEP and also at a national level.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Wincie. We have time potentially just for a couple of very quick questions.
I was very interested in your claim that women typically apply for less than 50% the capital that men would apply for in a similar context. Do you have any data about the outcome results and which are the more successful given that 50% less investment? Is there any comparison in terms of the value that they've created within, say, a 5-year period?
Absolutely. So that's a really good question. In terms of overall detail of the females entrepreneurs, I would say that only 0.6% of the females who do go into businesses actually end up turning over £1 million or more. And that's at a much lower rate than the male entrepreneurs overall. So that less, it's a combination of a lot of things. I can't pinpoint it to one reason, so we can't really say capital is the only reason that they succeed or they don't succeed. It's a combination of all those factors I talked about, the lack of time, network, mentors. Mentors are so important in order to grow successful businesses. And that's something that, on average, they, in the report, we found that they said they had less of.
We've got time for one last question.
Hi, I'm Helen Clack. I'm a county councillor in Surrey. I think you're inspirational, and how can we get you to come and talk to some of our local groups and areas? I think the idea that, you know, women entrepreneurs, who I know people, I'm a woman entrepreneur, I used to be, you know, before I became a councillor. Accessing finance from banks and support is terrifying a lot of the time, and we'll do anything, parents, friends, relatives, you know, or even online, you know, funding. It would be really helpful to have you come and talk to our business groups about, particularly about women accessing finance, and all the advice that you and your fantastic review can give to our businesses, particularly females. Are you able to do that?
Absolutely, I would love to support if my diary allows me to do so. Even if I can't, I promise you that someone like Vicky or another woman in business specialist from our bank would be more than happy to come and speak to your local businesses. One thing I will say is that in terms of access to finance, I've done lots of research on this for small businesses amongst our customer base. And really, the bank is usually the last place they'll go for financing, whether you're male or female. I've seen so many businesses bank their whole business on a credit card at high interest rates and all kinds of behaviors. However, as I said, it's amplified when you're in marginalized areas. And I've spoken to so many women, female entrepreneurs who don't call themselves entrepreneurs, by the way. They are afraid of that term, or they don't like that term. They tend to like to say business owner. And there are so many barriers there. And sometimes what it is that need for a helping hand. So if you know someone else who's gone to a bank and was successful in getting a loan, you are way more likely to actually go and apply for that as well. And that is really important. So the need to get more of those stories out there.
That's great. Helen, I think you've definitely got our commitment that
Yes.
between us and Vicky, we will come and do this, yeah. So
We are.
I'm afraid we are out of time. Wincie, thank you so much for coming today, and
Thank
to be
you.
continued.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.